The body is biosymbolic, and that is different areas of the body represent a different kind of set of beliefs or emotions. Literally, our speech is so full of metaphors that are actually real. I can't stomach that.
Makes my skin crawl.
This is real stuff. And we say, ooh, that just gave me the chills. It's like the piloerector muscles on every hair are connected to God, and our bodies are made that way. But we're talked out of it that your body is a minefield, and sooner or later, you're going to end up with a disease. The way women's health has been done in our culture is this. We haven't found it yet, but keep coming back because we will. Because it's disease screening, and that's completely different from walking in health.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. What if aging wasn't something to fear, but a doorway into greater freedom, vitality, and wisdom? Today's guest, my dear friend, Dr. Christiane Northrup, is a board-certified OBGYN physician, visionary pioneer, and multiple New York Times bestselling author who's spent her career redefining women's health. From menopause to mind-body healing, she's shown millions that the body is not a machine that breaks down. Rather, it's a radiant system designed for joy, pleasure, and longevity. I'm eager to explore with Dr. Northrup how each of us can step into a new era of empowered living. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go talk with Dr. Northrup. Chris, welcome back to the show, returning champion.
That's
so
right.
Delighted.
That's so great. You know, it's funny, Julie, I just had a flashback to one of our very first things that we did, and I was in Deer Isle, Maine. I remember it very, very well.
Well, you have been on the Ask Julie Ryan Show more than any other human on the planet. This is your fourth time on the Ask Julie Ryan Show. And for all of you who've been living under a rock, Dr. Northrup is, in my opinion, I named her this, the fairy godmother of women's health. So she is the original. She's the GOAT. You're going to laugh. Look what I got out of my bookcase.
Oh, my
Women's
God.
Bodies, Women's Wisdom. And this is from the mid-90s.
Yeah. That was the first edition, was 94. This is the fifth edition.
I have that one too.
Oh, right. That's great.
I have that one too.
Great.
So this one, I saw you on Oprah in the mid-90s.
Yep.
And I went and got this book. You know, we didn't have online yet.
Nope.
So I went to the bookstore and bought it, and it's highlighted and all of that. And then this is your fifth edition of Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. And I am a reference in there. Oh my God. One of the highlights of my life. I was just so honored. But everybody who is a woman, everybody who has daughters or granddaughters, this should be in everybody's house. This is the Bible of women's health, you guys. Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. You need to get a copy of it. It is absolutely the Bible. And it's not, I think the first one I read cover to cover, really, but it's just kind of like an encyclopedia of everything you want to know. And it's just good old fashioned. You want to know something, you look it up in Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. And I've got all your other books too, The Wisdom of Menopause. And I'm a source in that too, a reference in that too. Thank you so much with that. But you really are the one who set the trail for there's way more than meets the eye to women's health.
Yeah.
And so you say, I love this. You say symptoms are often messengers, not enemies. What do you mean by that?
The body is biosymbolic. And that means, and this was, Louise Hay brought this out in a big way. And that is different areas of the body represent a different kind of set of beliefs or emotions. So for instance, when we say, that makes me want to pull my hair out. I mean, you literally, our speech is so full of metaphors that are actually real. I can't stomach that, right?
Makes my skin crawl.
Yes, this is real stuff. Let's think about skin. And we say, "Ooh, that just gave me the chills." Well, that is a absolute it's like the piloerector muscles on every hair are connected to God. And when you have one of those moments where you go, "Whoa, that just gave me chills," that's like a truth situation. And our bodies are made that way, where we're always connected with God, but we're talked out of it by the kind of medical system we have, which is that your body is a minefield, and sooner or later, you're going to end up with a disease. So I call the way women's health has been done in our culture is this. We haven't found it yet, but keep coming back because we will. Because it's disease screening, and that's completely different from walking in health with your body and connecting it to the fact that we are made in the image of God, which the Bible tells us we are.
Well, and I want to do a deep dive into all of that here during our discussion today. So many women feel dismissed by the medical system. How can women, in particular, because we're the healers, not only for ourselves, but for our families and our loved ones, how can women learn to listen rather than fight their own bodies?
Well, first of all, you need to stop with the negative self-talk. And it's true though, Julie, think about it. You're born, right? You're weighed, you're measured. Um, well, baby care is more weighing, more measuring. How do you, what percentile are you in, and all of that. So you're always having to measure up. Give you a really good example. So when I was like 12, 13, which is around the time of menarche when you start your periods, you're becoming a woman, and everything in the culture tells you what that's supposed to look like. So I remember being weighed in gym class, okay? And they call out the number. And I weighed, yeah, they call out the number, and we had the ugliest gym suits ever. And, and I remember this, they called out the number, and I weighed 125 pounds in the 8th grade. Well, it took me decades later to realize that the reason my weight was never what it was supposed to be on the charts was because my muscle mass is way above average, and muscle weighs more than fat. So I spent the next 50 years beating myself up for something that's actually an asset. Like, you wanna have as much muscle mass as you can, and my body fat percentage is pretty low. But I spent my whole life fasting, dieting, trying to get down to the what 17 magazine, which no longer exists, said that I should weigh at my height, which was 115.
Well,
Okay?
didn't they say it was 5 pounds per every inch over 5 feet you were?
Yeah, like that. Yeah. And then before that, though, the Metropolitan life insurance tables were your height was measured, you're gonna love this, in 2-inch heels. That was
Why?
yeah, right. Why I guess they figured everyone coming to the doctor's office was wearing 2-inch heels back in the '50s or whatever,
Oh, for
and,
heaven's
so
sakes.
then what happened? Then the pendulum swung, and, 180 degrees from abnormal is not normal. So then we got into the body acceptance movement. So, we're honoring someone like Lizzo, who is terribly obese, and I don't care who you are. I've operated on enough women, and here's what happens. Before you get the massive hips and the massive gut, you've used up all the space in the omentum, which is an apron of fat and immune cells that covers the bowel. And it's the first thing you see when you open the abdomen. And
Mhm.
it's supposed to have some fat in there and all that, but that fat over the pelvis and the abdomen is very bioactive. It's different from the fat in the rest of the body. And it is very different in hormone production and so on. But by the time you've got all the fat around your hips, you've already used up all the space inside. So we did this awful thing where we said to women, oh, body acceptance. You remember they'd bring in the plus size models. And if you're a plus size model and you're, say, 20 pounds over your ideal, that's usually not a health risk. But 80 to 100 pounds over your ideal, that is a health risk. And now let's do the big health risk. This is the massive one. And that is take Ozempic, which is made from the venom of a Gila monster, and it paralyzes your stomach. And the side effects are within 1 year, most people have breast cancer. And there's another side effect: instant, out of nowhere blindness.
Blindness. I've been reading about that.
And it's not stopping the number of prescriptions. And I believe that Medicare just said they would fund it. I mean, let's talk about a genocidal situation.
Well, and I read that there are $2 billion in lawsuits against the manufacturer of that drug. And you think $2 billion, and I don't know what the statistics are of how many issues with it, but yeah, why is it? It's just because we've been so conditioned all our lives that we need to look a certain way that so many people are willing to risk their health to try and achieve it. And from what I read, it doesn't even work after a few months. Like,
Well,
people are reaching plateaus.
you have to keep taking it, of
But
course.
even then, is it
Even then,
still working?
I'm sure that's true, because this is the genius of the body, okay? The body will work around almost anything. It's doing everything in its power to keep you alive. And it's interesting. I have a family member who's an in-law. Her mother is demented in a home. Her blood indices, her blood pressure, her every single blood test is absolutely perfect. And so they can't get hospice. They can't. My own mother was on hospice for 6 months. We had to beg. Why?
I remember.
Remember that? Because she wasn't on any medication. So they don't have any place in the belief system that you could just need hospice because it's time to go, but you don't have a diagnosis. I'm telling you, the system is really nuts. And one of the things that Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom did, or what I did to bring it out there, was to invent a language of women's health. We didn't have a language of women's health. We had a language of women's disease. And then I even looked at the anatomy of a woman's body, and it's kind of colonized. So we have around the nipples, Montgomery's tubercles. It's some guy named Montgomery who is anatomist. Then we have the fallopian tubes. That's named after Dr. Fallopi, some Italian. Bartholin cysts, that Dr. Bartholin is the guy who came up with that. Skene's glands. I mean, it's like the female body is colonized, literally,
With men.
with men. With men, having to put their name on it. Like we have a flag. We're going to stake our claim on this territory. The word vagina means sheath for a sword.
Seriously, I've never heard that. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
Well, and there weren't that many women in medicine. When you tell everybody about when you went into medicine, and especially one of my favorite stories is your first day of medical school when they were talking to you about voodoo medicine.
Yeah, that was really interesting. They okay. So when I went to medical school, well, my Aunt Harriet was a pediatrician, and when she went, um, they had almost no women, and they would do things in the anatomy lab, like they would cut off the penis of the cadaver and put it in her lab coat pocket. And when I first went to medical school, they were using Vargas models from Playboy as anatomy drawings. They literally put up this Vargas model. If you have ever seen a Playboy, there was this very famous illustrator who would create a certain kind of look. Like the Gibson girls, the Gibbs, but these were Vargas models, very voluptuous. And that's what the professors put up on the screen. And it didn't even occur to them because I went to medical school in the 70s, and it was the beginning of the sort of second, third wave of the women's movement where we were questioning a lot of things. And my class at Dartmouth was 50% women, which was a miracle, a miracle. Now, the entire field of OBGYN has been taken over by women, but unfortunately, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists no longer knows what a woman is. The word mother's been replaced by birthing person. Breastfeeding has been replaced by chest feeding. And this has all just happened in the last 3 to 4 years. So I am no longer a member of an organization that I worked really hard to become board certified in. So we're in the middle of a big cultural shift at this point. But the first day of medical school, they taught us about voodoo death. I'll never forget it. It's like, well, it would be really good if you understood that voodoo death could be applied to what you guys are actually teaching. But in voodoo cultures like Haiti, when the shaman points the bone at you or the voodoo doll they put pins in, whatever, everyone believes it. And when they point the bone and say you're going to be dead in, a year, you're dead. You're dead. That is and this was Kenneth Pelletier's work way back in the '70s. Mind as healer, mind as slayer. What you believe is gonna happen is what's gonna happen. So, what are women, um, taught? They're taught that, wear the pink ribbon. We're coming up on October, which is, the Pinker Than Thou awards. And we're taught that sooner or later, you're gonna get this thing, or I've had patients say to me, "Well, every woman in my family had a hysterectomy, so, I'm 50, so I might as well sign up." I mean, there's this unbelievable, belief that the female body is a lemon. It's like God made a mistake, and so you're waiting, and then your beliefs support that, and then the belief this is one of our big powers as humans made in the image of God, and, life and death in Proverbs, it says, "Life and death is in the power of the tongue." Well, you keep saying it's only a matter of time before I get and then what is medicine? You go in for your annual checkup, and what are they doing? Hexing you most of the time. I mean, there almost no one should be on a statin drug. I remember when I first started, I'm in medical school. I'm in Plainfield, Vermont. I'm in the medical library. I'm doing a rotation in family medicine. I'm way up at the top of the library, and there's this book called Feminine Forever. And I'm thinking, wow. And I forget the guy, but this is a gynecologist who is saying that after menopause, you're no longer a woman, and so every woman needs to be on Premarin. It was Premarin back then, it's all they had, the urine of pregnant mares, and he gave this, reason why women become, mouthy and angry and all that, but if you just put them on the urine of pregnant mares, they would go back to who they're supposed to be. I later learned I did some deep dives on this guy, and of course, his wife kinda woke up around perimenopause, and, I'm not gonna put up with what I've been putting up with for all this time, and, but that book began an entire thing in OBGYN to put everyone on Premarin, and at the time, they didn't know that they should balance it with progesterone, And so all these women in the 70s, including my mother's friends, were getting endometrial cancer from an unopposed growth hormone in the lining of the uterus, the endometrium. So then in the 80s, they added a synthetic progestin called Provera, which was kind of like, okay, so you just do this thing to remove the waxy buildup and all of that. But Provera, it's synthetic. It's not native to the female body, and therefore it has what are called side effects. They're not side effects, folks. They are effects. And right now, there are lawsuits about Depo-Provera, which is used for birth control, and you just, either take a shot or you have little pellets embedded in you and whatever, and, you know, it makes women ornery. The guy who was head of the menopause center in Vanderbilt, I just loved him, and he said, "Well, Premarin is a natural hormone if your native food is hay," and he said, Provera makes women so ornery, that's why it's good for birth control. No one wants to come near them.
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez. I wanna do a deep dive into all the hormone stuff and all of that in a few minutes. When you go back and you look at your career, was there one catalyst or was it a whole bunch of different things that happened that led you to first integrate intuition into medicine? Like, I know about tell everybody this story about when to cut the cord during birth and all of that, but was there when you look back, was there a time where you said, "That was the moment when I made the decision to integrate it," or was it just kind of infiltrating over many, many years until it just was involved in all of the medicine that you were practicing?
I'll tell you what it was. I grew up in a real health nut family. My aunt and uncle were medical doctors. My father was a dentist. He had the work of Weston Price on his bedside table, which was and the Weston Price Foundation exists today. Weston Price was a dentist who went all over the world and studied the dentition of people on their regular diet and then their Westernized diet, and within 1 generation, their teeth decayed, their jawbones were completely different. So we grew up on that kind of nutritional things, like Adele Davis, "Let's Eat Right to Keep Fit." My parents did yoga, like, 60 years ago. They were joggers. We had a compost heap, all of that stuff. And then my sister was born. My mom had viral pneumonia. They put her on an antibiotic every single day, streptomycin. Baby's born, she won't eat, is hospitalized, died in a pool of her own vomit when she was 6 months old. No diagnosis ever given. I think she was damaged by the antibiotic. Then my brother Bill is born. After a while, he won't eat, no antibiotics, can't figure out what that is. In the middle of the night, a nurse said to my mother, "If I were you, I'd get him out of here. They don't know what's going on." My mother had been told that he was mentally defective and, that, whatever. And my mother said, "I looked at him and I knew he was okay." So they signed him out. So imagine this as my background. My brother gets signed out of the hospital against medical advice. I'm 8 years old. And we have to feed him every hour on the hour with a nasogastric tube and baby formula. I remember holding up the tube, and my dad had been an oral surgeon in a MASH unit in World War II. He certainly knew how to put down a nasogastric tube. No one could figure out what was going on. My parents, of course, were frantic. They finally found a doctor at Women's Medical called Dr. Crump, and she was a pediatric endoscopy pioneer. She knew how to put down the tube and take a look, and she did. And she said, "His esophagus is so eroded that if you don't take that tube out now, he is going to rupture the esophagus into the mediastinum and he will die."
Why
So
was it eroded? Why was his esophagus such a mess? Because 'Cause they'd been feeding him with the tube for all
because
that
the tube
time
had
in the
irritated it.
hospital? Okay.
Yeah, the tube had irritated it. And so they took the tube out, and she does what a woman would do. She goes, "Let's see what happens." let's see what happens.
The doctor said this.
Yeah. Like maybe if we just allow that esophagus to heal, and he's older now, he's a year old and weighed 10 pounds, let's see what might happen. Within 3 days, what's the first thing the idiots give him? Orange juice. That's a little acid. They give him orange juice, but he gulps it, screams, gulps it, screams. And my mother brings him home. I never forget it. We all went to the airport, and he's eating a roll that the stewardess gave him on the plane. Never saw him eat in my life. In fact, never saw him without adhesive tape holding that NG tube in. It wasn't the 3M kind stuff. It was adhesive tape. Anyhow, then I go to, I never thought I'd go to medical school. I just thought, I tried to get a PhD. I was going to teach biology, and God just said, go to medical school. My dad said to me, at the end of 4 years, you have to be something. You might as well have an MD after your name. So I never thought that I would ever go to medical school. Now, right around this time, my sister was killed in a car accident. She'd just graduated from the University of Alaska, and I was a second-year resident in Boston because I cried when I saw a baby born, and that was it. And my mother had a woman come to the house. She found herself just driving the car into this spiritualist church. So she's there in the parking lot of the spiritualist church, and the woman who was the minister said, I have someone here. Her name starts with a C, and she wants her mother to know that she's fine and that her grandmother was in the car with her. So that's my sister. And then the woman comes to the house. She was a full trance channel, and she channeled Dr. Andre and, talked about everything that was going on. And so here I am, a second-year resident.
So what year is this?
This is 1977, 78.
Okay. So woo-woo really wasn't in the zeitgeist yet.
No. But, before that, though, I forgot this part. Here was the big deal. I'm 12, and I'm babysitting, and I see this book, and it's in a box, and the title on the box says, Natives of Eternity. Now, I was the quintessential good girl, but I had to tear that box in, and what was it? It was a book called Natives of Eternity by Flower Newhouse, a Christian mystic out at Christ Word Ministry in California. I go home, I tell my mother how excited I am. It talks about the angels of birth, the angels of death, the nature spirits, the divas, I'm so excited. It's like, oh God, just what I thought was happening. This is all true. My mother sets me up with the woman who's had that book, and I had a series of breakfasts with her every month until I went off to college, because she had gone to the Christ Word Ministry, worked with Flower Newhouse, knew all about the angels. And so, and I read all of Edgar Cayce when I was in high school.
You were interested in this stuff long before you elected to go to medical school. And you just didn't go to medical school. You went to Ivy League medical school. So, I mean, that was a big deal, especially for a woman during that part of our history there. You say that health isn't just about living longer, it's about living freer. What do you mean by that?
Well, here's the way we have it set up on this planet, right? You're born, and, Julie, I remember illustrations that I would see in textbooks. Here's one: Woman's Health Through the Life Cycle. They would show you as a baby, and then as a young woman, and then around the age of 50, they'd start to show the picture of you, like, bending over. I kid you not, and by the way, this kind of belief is so embedded that when you ask a class of 5th graders, what does a 65-year-old woman look like? They all bend over like they have a cane. This
Even
is
now?
this was the work done by Becca Levy, like maybe 15 years ago. So I don't know when exactly that was done, but pretty much your idea about what it means to grow older is embedded by the age of 11. Let's just put it that way.
I love how Nora Ephron, I love this quote, and I'm gonna paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact quote, but she said, "The best thing for aging women that's happened in womanhood is Lady Clairol hair dye." She said, I mean, it used to be that women didn't dye their hair, so they looked gray or white, and it made them look older. And then once Lady Clairol, came up with their hair dye and women could dye their hair, then it started to change. And when I read that, I thought, that's really funny and it's really profound.
Well, Ellen Langer, the mother of mindfulness, professor emeritus at Harvard, points out that certain things do what she calls priming. Priming. So here's an example. If let's say you're an older mother, so you have your first baby when you're 42, 43. So you're hanging out in kindergarten with much younger women. Those women, the women who have their children later, tend to stay younger and live way longer. Why? They are primed by their environment to be thinking in terms of being younger. So here's let's say a 44-year-old who has her first baby. So she's doing all the stuff with little kids. Someone else maybe had her kids way back or didn't have any at all, and she's sliding into menopause thinking, "Oh, this is the beginning of the end," because she watched her mother, get depressed or get high blood pressure or whatever, and the mother never looked at the fact that all these life stages see, the processes of the female body are metaphors for the way God comes into physical matter. So conception, gestation, labor, delivery, postpartum, menopause, the menstrual cycle, all are telling you how God comes into matter.
Okay, say more about that.
Okay, so let's say that you have an idea for a book or an idea for a garden or some kind of divine download. That's the conception, okay? So you conceive it here with your antenna to God and your thoughts. Then what do you have to do with it? You got to talk about it. Creative, fifth chakra, where the thyroid is. You got to think about it, talk about it, write about it. And then you have to, in your heart, you have to get passionate about it. And you got to feel strongly enough about it because it's going to require some work on your part. Third chakra, the personal power, self-esteem, your guts here, sense of responsibility to self or others. You got to have enough personal power to get it going. And then second chakra, money, sex, and power, where we give birth to things in the physical world. That's gotta be shored up. Do I have the agency to do this? Do I have the support to do this? Remember, second chakra I learned from Carolyn Mace. This is where we wear our weapons and our wallets. Knives, guns, sexuality. Women have used their sexuality as a weapon forever. Think of Tokyo Rose, think of, the honeypots, all the rest of it. And then the first chakra, which wires in our immune system and the health of our bones. And by the way, blood cells are made in the bone marrow. That's wired in by your sense of safety and security on planet Earth. How grounded are you in the way things actually work on Earth? The people, the places, the things that support us. So all of those determine the success of a pregnancy. Like, are you supported? We don't support young women having babies at all. At all.
Not
I
even
mean,
now?
no. Well, it's better than it used to be. It's better than it used to be, but okay, here's an example. Nobody should have to leave their 6-week-old baby to go back to work if they don't want to. If they don't want, I mean, I quickly learned, oh my God, when I had 2 kids and I had a little baby at home and I went back to work, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, the wool has been pulled over our eyes. This is easy. Going back to work, having the staff, having people support you, this is easy. Staying at home with the baby, that's hard."
That is hard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Before I forget too, I had mentioned, and I love when you tell this story about when you went up against some of your professors, I believe in your residency, about when to cut the cord. And what's the symbolism of cutting the cord later in life?
Well, the symbolism is that now you're on your own. Now you're on your own. But here's what we do. When it really matters, we cut the cord too soon. I mean, the umbilical cord is an organ in and of itself. And think of how God designed this, all right? So you are born and you go through the most profound physical changes where the ductus arteriosus closes and the pulmonary or artery changes, massive changes in the heart and lungs, while you are learning how to breathe on your own. And the umbilical cord connected to the placenta is that fail safe thing. Okay, you go over here and you can just start to breathe, but don't worry, we've got something still connecting you to the mothership.
This is when the
So
baby is born, when the baby is
when the
first
baby
born.
is first born. So we're gonna make this okay, being born, you leave this wonderful womb space that's warm, and you've got your mother's heartbeat there for reassurance, and then you get squeezed out, and we wanna make this transition as gentle as possible so that your imprint about life on planet Earth is kind and gentle. But what do we do? Oh, no, no. Cut the cord right away before the baby is even got their first breath going. Um, and then, in the olden days, they'd hold the baby upside down, which is pretty horrible. And then I've watched babies get circumcised in the delivery room to get it over with. Let's cut off 40,000 nerve endings with no anesthesia. And then let's do the heel prick and let's inject them with hepatitis B, which contains all kinds of toxins that go right to the brain. That's what we do in OBGYN, when in fact, the way God set it up is the baby would come out and you would put it right on your abdomen and your breast, and it would get colonized with your bacteria, not with the stuff that's in the newborn nursery. And, then you would suckle the baby, which produces oxytocin, which makes the uterus clamp down so you won't bleed. And then the placenta will be delivered at that point. But we do in the hospital everything in our power to interrupt what God created. So there's this wonderful play, it's called Birth, and the first line in it is, "I want what my dog got."
Oh, heavens. I had a client this morning. This is interesting, the timing of this discussion, because she has been in fight or flight her whole life. She's in her early 60s, and she's like, "Why? I know what to do, but I'm always in a panic regardless of what it is." And I said, and when I'm working with somebody, I've got them on my radar. I can see inside their bodies with their permission, of course, and I'm getting divine downloads. And I'm hearing in my divine download, ask her about her uh, mother when she was pregnant with her. Ask her about what was going on and in the first few years of life. And I've studied Bruce Perry, Dr. Bruce Perry's work, who talks about the neural pathways are laid in utero and in the first 2 years of life. And when there's a tumultuous pregnancy for whatever reason, that it's almost like the person is hardwired for fight or flight. So I asked her, I said, "Tell me about, what do you know about when your mom was pregnant?" She said it was awful. It was an abusive home, la, 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 la. And the first 2 years of life were terrible. Her whole childhood was terrible. And so I said what Dr. Perry's work shows is that to help calm ourselves as adults, we want to mimic, and you referenced this a minute ago, that mother's heartbeat. In utero, that baby knows it's okay as long as it can hear that thump, 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 thump. So he says, listen to music. It doesn't matter what the tempo is, it's that constant beat. Take walks, run. It's that thump, thump, thump of your footsteps, whether you're running or walking, that emulates the mother's heartbeat. I take it a step further, and what spirit does when spirit works through me and with me is we come up with a mold for the neural pathways. I did this with this woman this morning. There's a mold. Do you remember the creepy crawlers back in the 70s? It was like this kit that you could buy, and you'd put this gel in it and it would heat it up and you'd make like a cockroach or a worm or something. So I see a mold of my client's neural pathways, which look like laser beams inside the brain, like a laser beam in a museum crisscrossing a room or in a home or a building, part of the security system. And I watch stem cell energy go in there. I see the neural pathways get generated in this mold. I watch them come out. They look like creepy crawlers. They're like this rubbery, like gelatinous almost, but solid. I watch that go in on top of the actual neural pathways and assimilate in with always a vortex above whenever we're using stem cell energy. I'm telling you, Chris, within 3 or 4 minutes, this woman was calm. She was calm. It was instant. And I said, so much of this, to your point, is from the neural pathways, and there's a physiological reason why people feel like that, and it's usually women.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, remember, women are way more connected. So the corpus callosum that connects the two hemispheres is like a superhighway in women. In men, it's like a one-lane dirt road, which is why men can block everything out. And no matter what's going on, they can just go to sleep. And the woman is like, how does this work?
Yeah.
And it's that, and that's why.
And I got 15 things I got to do before I get in the bed, and the husband's already asleep.
Exactly, because they're created that way. So they can only do one thing at a time, unless they're left-handed, and then they're more like women.
I never heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Was there a moment when you realized, okay, I got to step away from conventional medicine? Do you remember that moment? Just practicing only conventional medicine.
I never always practiced conventional medicine. I
Well,
was
okay.
always
You
pushing the
gave up
envelope.
your practice and decided to, really educate the women of the world.
That was in 1997. But before that, what really did it, Julie, is that I got 2 lawsuits on the same day. One for a patient that I'd never seen, and one because here's what
How's
happened.
that happen?
Well, I was sued 8 times,
Yeah,
and
but for a patient you never saw?
oh, that's because she saw one of our nurse practitioners. So I went to our lawyer and I said, "Wait a minute, they've got a totally different contract and all that." And he goes, "It doesn't matter, Chris." He says, "It doesn't matter. You're seen as the top of the flagpole." And then I realized, oh my God, if I am responsible for people I have never even seen, I got to get out of this. I have got to get out of this, and I need to change the liability structure. Then I go to PBS and get sued for a couple of my PBS specials. You have to understand that it is very radical work to teach people that they are whole and they don't really need the medical system the way they've been taught they do. It's very, very radical. And there are forces that don't want you to know that.
And
I
it's all
mean,
about the money. It's all
it's
about
all about the
finances.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. It's all about the money. Well, you're going through walking through purgatory on all of that has been the women of the world's gain. So thank you for not crumbling up into a ball and hiding in a corner and actually going on with what I believe is your life's work. I believe that all of that was to get you ready for all this other stuff that you've done. So let's change directions for a minute. Since you're the fairy godmother of women's health and the original menopause doctor, here are some specific questions that clients often ask me. And I thought, we've got you captive. Let's just let's just hear it from the source here. There's so much attention on breast cancer and annual mammograms that, in my opinion, create a lot of fear. You touched on that earlier. Is there a preferred way to stay on top of breast health?
Yeah. First of all, take enough iodine. The breasts need 3 milligrams of iodine a day, and probably the entire body needs at least 12.5 milligrams a day. This is the work of David Brownstein. Iodine directly modifies estrogen, which is a growth hormone for the breast. And if you have enough iodine, you do not get breast cancer. And it's like we still don't know this. The other one is vitamin D. We need way more vitamin D than we're taught. And if people would just go to grassrootshealth.net, that is a site for the top vitamin D researchers in the world. And you can take 50,000 international units every other day, and you need to take it with vitamin K2, about 100 to 180 micrograms a day, or get out in the sun. I mean, but you don't make vitamin D under the skin in the northern hemisphere above the Mason-Dixon line between about October 15th and March 15th on average. But we are way under with vitamin D. In fact, when you look at the women who are diagnosed with breast cancer, almost all of them have almost no vitamin D. So those two things, iodine and vitamin D. Now, I will tell you that I've never had a mammogram, never will, always knew that this is not a good test. And you'd be much better off with a thermogram. A thermogram measures the heat in your breasts, and it's a very specific pattern, like your own fingerprint. And if there are areas of excess heat, because cancer usually starts as inflammation, which shows up as heat, then there's a lot you can do to decrease the heat pattern and therefore literally prevent abnormal growth. So, very interesting. Dr. Paul Merrick, one of the top intensive care docs in the world, just did a whole deep dive on mammograms. And he said, there is no science behind this. In fact, what they've done with the higher resolution mammograms, they have found all of this, what's called ductal carcinoma in situ. It is not carcinoma. But just say that word, and women are terrified. So, oh, well, I have DCIS. Well, 99.9% of it is never gonna go anywhere, but what
And
is
isn't it stage 0
that's stage
cancer?
0, it's not
Yeah,
cancer.
yeah.
We need to change the name. So then what you do, you scare the woman to death, and she has both breasts removed. Why? Because of surveillance fatigue. Think about it. You've just made the breasts into 2 pre-malignant lesions sitting on your chest, and you're just waiting for cancer. Well, that's like living with the sword of Damocles over your head. So you're constantly worried that you're gonna get breast cancer. I believe that since they came up with all this, the number of prophylactic mastectomies, "Oh, just get rid of them so I don't get cancer," is up like, 400%.
Wow.
So
Probably 15 years ago, I was with my gynecologist, and she said, "Did you get your mammogram yet this year?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, are you gonna get it?" I said, "Oh, maybe." And she laughed, and I said, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Did you get one?" She said, "No." I said, "Do you ever get them?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Then why are you giving me grief about it?" And she said, this was huge. She said, "Because I have to check the box that I asked you in order for my malpractice insurance to be in effect."
there it is.
I thought, whoa, 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 whoa. She didn't get mammograms either.
A lot of doctors don't. A
A
lot of
lot of
doctors
lot
don't.
of doctors don't. So many of my clients tell me that they'd prefer to have thermography or an ultrasound, but their insurance won't pay for it unless they have a mammogram first.
Yeah.
Is there a workaround other than just paying out of pocket for it?
Not that I know of, and this is why we are in a position now where we need a parallel system. And what I would like women to do in the meantime is the vitamin D, the iodine, self breast massage, like with castor oil on a regular basis. Cold pressed organic castor oil is like it's called the palm of Christi or the palm of Christ. There's so much you can do. And so notice. So now they got the QR scan. It's like a Da Vinci robot for a hysterectomy. Ooh, we got the robot. Well, let's go upstream, shall we? Do you really need the hysterectomy? I mean, this is like we're constantly surveilling, like there are now these tests, a blood test that can determine do you have cancer? It's like, well, okay, what are you going to do about it? If you do, you're going to take a microtome and section the entire body. I mean, I had a person doing radionics, frequency stuff with me, and I was told you have a 80-90% chance of getting a gynecologic cancer in the next year. Okay, luckily it's me. It's me. So I'm going, "Oh, no, 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 no. No, I'm not doing that." Now, what's interesting, Julie, I had 2 cats at that time. I was post-divorce. I was single. I was sort of facing, God knows what's gonna happen, in my life here, and both of my cats got cancer. I believe they took it on for me, so I don't think this guy was wrong, but that kind of hexing, when you say to someone well, it's the same with, "Well, that runs in my family."
Yeah.
What else runs in your family? What
Poor
else?
diet, no exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, all
On and on.
all the
Yeah.
diseases,
Right.
all of the epigenetic influences that are a script that you have the ability to change by changing your mind. Doesn't the Bible say, give God can give me a new mind?
Well, and you referenced this early on in this conversation too, that our thoughts create our reality. So if you're scared to death that this is going to happen, and I have many clients that say, I want you to scan my whatever because there's colon cancer in my family, or you know, uh, there's dementia or Alzheimer's in my family, there's whatever in my family. And I say, that's behavioral. That's epigenetics. It's not genetics. And I scan it and I'll say it's fine. And then I'll send them, a whole bunch of references on that. So, yeah. So, right now, if somebody wants to have a thermogram or an ultrasound, they just basically have to pay for it out of pocket. What I will tell you, though, is, and you know this, shop around, call a bunch of different independent radiology centers. I needed to have a CT scan after a fibroid, and that's the story I'll go into in a minute. And the hospital wanted like $10,000 for a CT scan. I want to say like 6 or 10,000. I mean, it was stupid. However much money it was, and I called, and they wanted $2,000 down payment on it before they'd even schedule it. And that doctor had ordered this. And so I called a friend of mine and said, call around and see, what some of the other prices are from the freestanding radiology centers. I got it done for $500. And my insurance paid for it. And I called the surgeon and I said, "Do you understand?" It was some astronomical fee. I want to say it was either $6 or $10,000. And I got it done for $500. He was so angry. He couldn't even see straight about it because of the difference in the price. He said, it's just so messed up
It is.
in this insurance industry. So I know I've talked to you about this before. I had this big old fibroid, And I don't know if I sent you the picture of it or not, but when I saw the scan of it, it looked like it had a face on it. It looked like a fetus. They were big. They had to open me up to get it out. And what I realized was it was 2 years before I started the Ask Julie Ryan stuff, and I was resisting, 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 resisting. I don't wanna do this. I'm a businesswoman. People will think I'm nuts, all of that. And what I read in your books is that fibroids and things like that can be birthing something that isn't a human child. It can be birthing a new part of your life, birthing a new adventure, birthing a new marriage, birthing a divorce, whatever. I'd love for you to say something about that just real quickly.
Yes. Well, I had a big fibroid too, like this big.
Yeah.
And fibroids are, it's shooting your creative energy into a dead end job or relationship. So the fibroid in the negative represents unused creative energy. And once you know that, you go, oh, and then you do what you did. You're afraid of what God is telling you to do. This is what you were born for, to do the work you're doing now. And I was in a dead end marriage. And no matter what I did, I couldn't make it work. And the beauty of the perimenopause transition is that all the stuff that you have been resisting, which you know to be true, comes up. And if you don't see it here, it manifests in your body. And so when I had my fibroid removed, I did the Peggy Huddleston stuff, which is, you
We had
base.
her on the show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Peggy's did wonderful work at, New England Baptist and so on, and you use that opportunity, that ritual called surgery, to put in place a whole new belief system. So what I said as I went under anesthesia, "When you awaken, the pattern that created this will have left your body." And I was a single woman 2 years later. And so I don't blame my then husband at all. It was I had come to a crossroads. And so when you have fibroids, it's very and 40% of women have them. It's just very important to understand that they don't just come out of nowhere. They don't just land on you. But if you could appreciate it in the moment, if you knew it, it wouldn't go into your body. And our intellect will do everything to not confront this, believe me. I thought at first when it was first diagnosed, I thought, "Oh, well, must be I'm seeing too many women with fibroids and I caught one." I went to the germ theory of disease.
Oh, geez. When I am watching an energetic healing and participating in spirit working through me and with me on a fibroid healing, I always see fibrin, part of the clotting cascade in blood, which looks like spider web material to me. And it comes out of the uterine wall and it forms kind of like a cocoon, like fibroin that a silkworm uses to make its cocoon. And then I watch the DNA get resequenced. I've got a bug in here, sorry. I'll watch the DNA get resequenced so that it corrects that clotting cascade that's working overtime. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It is. It's collagen. They're these, very dense collagenous. Yeah.
Right, right. And fibrin, as I understand it, is a protein used to clot blood, which we need, but we don't need an excess of it.
Yeah,
So
but
I
notice
So again, there's always an emotional component in place before any kind of medical condition arises, and you're
always.
the one who's talked about that in the mainstream more than anybody that I know of. Because
Yes.
of seeing you on Oprah nearly 30 years ago, I I bought your book, first of all, and then I discovered bioidentical hormones long before I needed them. And I'm so grateful because they've supported my health and well-being for more than 2 decades. So, for women who don't know what bioidentical hormones are and how they relate to the pharmaceutical hormones, can you give us a synopsis of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. A bioidentical hormone is a hormone that matches exactly what's found in your female body. They're made from wild Mexican yams and soybeans. So you start with that moiety, and then through a series of things done in the lab, it exactly matches what's in your body. Now, these cannot be patented because anything God created, you cannot patent. So, what they do in order to make most hormone therapy that's pharmaceutical is they make some changes in it so that it can be patented. Now, with bioidenticals, it's interesting because you can get bioidenticals in a regular pharmacy because what they've done, like for instance, the patches, the estroderm patches, the Vivel Dot, the Climera, they patent the glue. They patent the delivery system of the bioidentical hormone. So that's how they've gotten around that. And we've had um, formulary pharmacies for years, starting in the late 80s, early 90s, where they take USP, United States Pharmacopoeia, bioidentical progesterone, bioidentical testosterone, bioidentical 17 beta estradiol, and then make an individualized prescription for the patient. Now, as you might imagine, the pharmacies, the formulary pharmacies have been under the gun because the big pharmaceutical houses don't want that. The formulary pharmacies are like the old apothecary, where they have the herbs and they so on, and they're making a formulation just for you. And, so the formulary pharmacies began to do the bioidentical hormones back in the '90s when I started to write about it and started to use them. And I worked with Joe Delk of the Delk Pharmacy in Tennessee. He would send the prescriptions to my patients. It would be transdermal. The prescription would cost like $60, and I just call him up and he'd send it. I mean, this is the way it should be. And then now the bioidenticals have become much more mainstream. And I was on Oprah with Suzanne Summers around the bioidenticals. And what was fascinating is I was on that show. Suzanne Summers is over here. The chief of OBGYN at Northwestern is over here. And I'm in the middle as the referee because the standard OBGYN said, no, bioidenticals are dangerous. Suzanne Summers over here is saying anything made in a pharmacy is dangerous. And it's like, no, 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 no. The truth is right here in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And I'm glad you brought up that the patches are available, the bioidentical and others in the regular pharmacies because people can get their insurance to pay for it. Whereas the formulary or the compounding pharmacies sometimes are more expensive and it's out of pocket, and some people can't afford that. Now, you have formulated a line, your Amata products that
Mhm.
are over the counter. And I always recommend if women say to me, I just don't have the finances to pay for the bioidenticals. And I say, oh, well, but I've got this company called Amata that tell us about the Amata and how that compares with the
Okay.
prescriptions.
This is very interesting. And I first heard about the herb Pararia mirifica back in, God, I don't know, probably the early 2000s. And I began to experiment with it because it contains the most potent phytoestrogen known to humanity. It's been used in Thailand for over 700 years, called the miracle herb, and men and women have used it. So I began to research it, and here's what it does. It lands on the beta estrogen receptor in the body. There's an alpha and there's a beta, and regular mammalian estrogen lands on the alpha, so it can act as a growth hormone. But the phytoestrogen acts as a selective estrogen receptor modulator, like tamoxifen. So it actually is preventing the overgrowth from taking estrogen. And so I began to work with it and then decided to start a company because no one was doing much with it. And I had formulated a vaginal moisturizer, and the Praeria mirifica will restore the vaginal lining because one of the first signs of menopause is dryness, like vaginal dryness, because the whole lining, the mucosal lining of the vagina is really estrogen sensitive. And when you're in perimenopause and your levels are all over the thing, you're moving from um intermittent current, AC current to direct current. And so you're in, in no man's land. So I formulated this and I found that for many women, here's what I say, Julie, just sort of what you say. Try this first because it's over the counter. And then if that doesn't work, go with the bioidenticals. Because many women, and they'll go from one to another. And, there's no, oh, this is the absolute only this is going to work. Because, bioidenticals have worked for so many women.
Yeah, and they've been used in Europe for long time before they came over here. When you see a woman who's been on bioidentical hormones, the research that I've seen specifically talks about women who start on bioidenticals in their 40s and 50s are 40% less likely to develop Alzheimer's and dementia. What do you see what are the benefits of a woman being on bioidentical hormones? And if she doesn't start taking them in her 40s, like I started at 45, are they just screwed for the rest of their lives?
No. See, this is how they do it in medicine. They make you think, oh, because what they were doing after the Women's Health Initiative, Julie, everybody was scrambling. Because remember, they stopped that study, this enormous study, to prove one way or another, finally, did every woman need estrogen? And here was the plan. If you took estrogen, you had higher HDLs, high density lipoprotein, the good cholesterol, and therefore we would prevent heart attacks in so many women if they would just take the hormones. And I said in 94, first edition of the book, they're using the wrong hormones at the wrong dose. They're never going to find out what they're looking for. And indeed, what was it? 2002, boom, stopped the Women's Health Initiative. All these women went cold turkey, horrible. But then they've spent all this money on the database and they're trying to figure out, were we entirely wrong? And they massage the data and all of that. Here's what I would say. The body is self-renewing. We make a new body every 7 years. I think it's fine to start on an estrogen in your 70s. Who cares? The body will respond. Or the Praeria mirifica. What it is, Julie, is that when your body's going through that, this is why they put so many women on birth control pills in their 40s, so that they won't go through this hormonal thing, roller coaster. But then if you're on, and all birth control is synthetic, so you put them on that, and then they just go right to, like Premarin and Provera. So they never quite go through any of that. Now, there's some wisdom there, but I would prefer that it's bioidenticals or the Praeria mirifica or that kind of thing. What a lot depends on is what the adrenal health is going into perimenopause, because your adrenals make the steroid hormones. They make the building blocks and the cholesterol for the steroid hormones. Now think of the number of women who are told, oh, your cholesterol is over 200, you need a statin. Well, that's going to decrease the building blocks for your hormones. So those women are more apt to get all these other things. Because you need, when they say fathead, we are. The brain is mostly cholesterol. And so if your adrenals are shot from being tired and wired and all the rest of it, then you're going to suffer. And it's one of the things you said on a recent call, I could tell this woman was like a wilted plant.
Yeah, that's what they look like.
She needed estrogen. Yeah. And I
Well,
would start on that at any point.
That's what I've heard you say that before, and so I'll use you as a reference, and I'll say, to me, it's like, well, you can't take vitamin C after you're over 65. That just doesn't make any sense if you're going to do something that's going to help the body. And how does it help the body in the women that start on bioidentical hormones? What have you seen over your career? How does it help? Does it help the brain, the bones,
everything? See, there are estrogen receptors on every cell of the body. So one of the things you find is dry eyes, dry vagina. So the dry eyes are very common. So if you replenish the estrogen, either with the Praeria mirifica plant or with bioidentical estrogen and progesterone and a little testosterone, then you're going to do good things there. Estrogen is great on your skin. We know that it increases the collagen layer, and that's the part that tends to go away. There are estrogen receptors on bone, and and the brain, of course,
And
so
heart,
and the heart,
heart health. Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah.
I think that the bioidenticals are becoming more just talked about, becoming more of the zeitgeist after you started talking about them, what, 40 years ago. And yesterday or the day before, I kid you not, I heard an ad for Weight Watchers that you can go to Weight Watchers now and they have a menopause system for a specific food program or something, and you can get hormone replacement therapy there with a practitioner. And I'm thinking, seriously, at Weight Watchers? So, yeah, I looked it up, and sure enough, I looked at their website, and I thought that was remarkable. What do you say to doctors who tell their patients estrogen causes cancer?
There's definitely data on that. There definitely is. It can be a cancer promoter. However, the data is so all over the place because there's a lot of data that says it doesn't. The main thing is balance. You take, in general, the lowest dose that does the job. Now, I have friends who are on the Wiley protocol. That was the protocol that Suzanne Humphries was on. And not Suzanne Humphries, Suzanne,
Summers.
yeah, Summers,
Summers.
right. Suzanne Humphries is another woman who's done amazing work. Anyway, Suzanne, the Wiley protocol was to cycle your hormones at the level of a 20-year-old
Mhm.
and you get a period and all that. Now, Suzanne, they didn't say this on Oprah, but she'd had a hysterectomy, so she wasn't getting a period every time. And my feeling on that, I get it, but it's never felt right to me. Like, if God has you go through a period where you're not physically fertile anymore, there's a reason for that because you become creatively fertile. You know, and in the shaman cultures, they said you retained your wise blood. So my feeling is enough hormone so that you're not depleted, you're not wilted, but not so much that you're 20. Yeah.
My feeling just from a commonsensical, non-medical standpoint is if estrogen caused cancer, wouldn't every 15-year-old girl have cancer on the planet? Because that's when the estrogen levels are really high, number 1. And number 2, when women are pregnant, isn't the incidence of breast cancer, like, almost 0 because the estrogen levels are so high? So that just doesn't make sense to me.
No, both estrogen and progesterone, very,
Yeah.
very, very high.
Yeah. Have 50 years of women's health treatments actually improved outcomes, or are we still falling short?
Oh, we're falling way short, way short. You know that the perinatal mortality in this country, no, uh, maternal mortality, dying mothers, and perinatal mortality, dying babies, is the marker for how well a country is doing in general. The United States has worse maternal mortality and fetal mortality than third world countries at this time
Wow. Why?
because of the number of interventions. I mean, the number of when fetal monitoring came in, I was an intern and I watched the C-section rate go up to 25% overnight. Do you know that to this day, there's not been a single study showing that fetal monitoring does anything more than increase the C-section rate?
I just know I know when I was in labor, I had my husband I was like, "Get away from that thing," because he was saying, "Oh my god, here comes a really big one, you better get ready." And I said, "Stop, get
Stop.
away from that."
Well,
Yeah.
what does it do? It makes the self an object to be observed from outside yourself. So you go into a laboring woman's room and you say, "How are you doing?" And she looks at the frickin' monitor. Wait, no, it's happening in your body.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us about your upcoming course, because you are the source as far as I'm concerned globally right now. And so much of these questions that I've just asked you have just scratched the surface. And I know you put together a course to really help educate us in this day and age in a quick, concise, thorough way to help women not only help themselves and their friends, but their daughters as well.
Yeah. So I'm doing a 4-week course called Reset Your Hormones in 4 weeks. So I want women to know all about insulin, cortisol, epinephrine, the adrenals, breast health. What can you do so that you don't feel like you're powerless or out of control during this basic soul rebirth that is the perimenopausal period? And, I want women to there first of all, there's nothing new under the sun. So I see all these things about the new menopause. I'm sorry, there's nothing new about it. What is new is social media and that kind of thing. But now, more than even I had in the 90s, I understand about the biofield around the human body, where we are actually biophotonic light. We're the fourth and fifth states of matter. And so, Julie, remember when we said your health begins with your thoughts and beliefs, but it also is related to the things that happened in utero and the epigenetic stuff. And that's all in the Taurus field around your body. And that can all
Energy
be
field.
the
Yeah.
energy field. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And she's a graduate of my class, you guys. You were in what, like class 2 or 3 or something? Yeah, and we're at 25 now. Yeah, you were early in it, and I remember when you were in the class and you were going, "Yep, yep." I mean, you knew it intuitively, and then we put it together in explainable terms from the energy medicine side of the equation. So, I'm really excited about this class that you're gonna be teaching because I think it gives women the wherewithal to do it, and it'll be recorded if they can't come live, right? They can.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, and how do they find out about it?
You're gonna have the link, I think, right here, but if you go to drnorthrup.com and sign up for my e-news, you'll see it there, but we've also, got it on Instagram. I lost my name on Instagram, so Instagram is Doctor of Divine Biology. Facebook, Dr. Christiane Northrup, it's gonna be there. So we're starting to let people know about it now, but it begins October 7th.
That
Yep,
was my next question.
yep.
You say choice is medicine. What's one choice women underestimate in creating better health for themselves and their families?
The one choice is the idea that you are powerless over what happens in your body. Running for the victim position. I'm a victim of my body. I hear women say this all, my body turned on me. I can't trust my body. These are all victim statements, and your body, because we're in a free will universe, your body will say, "Oh, okay, that's how you want it? We'll do that for you."
Because thoughts create our reality.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You emphasize the importance of joy in maintaining health and vitality. Is there a simple daily ritual that you can recommend that can help raise our capacity for joy and shift us out of the survival mode?
Yes. I'm gonna give you a 3-part thing that I learned from a guy named Jamie Winship, who wrote a book called Living Fearless. This is so effective. Okay. And it's this. 1, you just say, "God, silence the voice of the enemy." And the enemy would be anyone who's put you down, anything that you believe about yourself, that isn't true. Dial down my own thoughts, please.
Yeah, that
Okay?
feel bad. Any thought that feels bad.
That's right, just dial them down. Dial them down. Because what are the bad thoughts? They are telling you something about yourself that's not true. Then, third step, replace my mind with the mind of Christ. Just do that for me, please. Then you ask yourself, or you ask God, or the inner indwelling Holy Spirit, um, God, tell me what you want. Who do you say I am? What do you want me to know about this? What do you want me to think about this? And if you're still and you write down, you are going to hear the most magnificent things about yourself, because we have been taught from such a young age, you're not enough, you're too fat, instead of, you are my beloved child. I made you in my own image. I knew you before you were knit together in your mother's womb. And you have a unique perspective on this planet that no one else can do except you. Yeah. So spend some time with what God tells you who you are, not your teacher, not your husband, not your mother, not your whatever. And then spend time in that. The other thing that I have learned, Julie, is that today's praise music is so uplifting. It's so good on YouTube, on Spotify. Just put in some of the stuff, Bethel music, elevation worship. You get some good old praise music, and or music that's recorded in the solfeggio tones, 432 hertz, 444, 528. Put that on, and you will instantly, your cells respond to that. Oh, these are the God frequencies. That's who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Gregorian chants and the solfeggio frequencies, and as you know, I live in the Deep South, so I go to a Southern Baptist church where they're doing gospel music. Holy Mother of God. I mean, it's like the roof's gonna blow off from the energy. It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. You speaking of that, and along those lines of what you just told us, thank you for sharing that. You say the body's always broadcasting truth. How can we get better at receiving the signal?
First of all, just with the intention. Like, I intend to receive the signal, or what I do is like, "Okay, God, show me. Show me." And then wait for it, and you'll sometimes see it in license plates, like the license plate that's in front of you. Here's an example. I was, going to a tango lesson way back, and I was meh about it. I had to drive into Portland, it was snowy, and then a license plate guy pulls in front of me, and the license plate says, "Fun." And I thought, "Yeah, this is going into dance is just about fun. Would you get yourself out of the bad neighborhood that is in your head?" Or you'll see animals. I love, the whole animal symbology, where you see, the other day there was a whole flock of wild turkeys, in a suburban neighborhood. And what's that about? It's about Thanksgiving and giving back and, all of that stuff. So I
When you
love,
got that pond full of frogs that
yeah,
that
yeah,
are in your backyard that are
that's
very
right.
noisy.
Yeah. They are during mating season,
Right,
which
it's
is,
hilarious.
it's amazing. Yeah. In
It's
June,
hilarious.
July. Yeah.
Yeah. Couple more questions as we're winding down here. Do you sense a collective shift currently unfolding among women? Are you seeing the zeitgeist and the conversation starting to change? I mean, you've been at this a long time, so you're the one to ask.
Yes. Here's what's happening. The pendulum has swung too far. So Gloria Steinem was, "A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle." It's like, all right, you're going to go. And by the way, and I saw this at its peak during my then husband's 25th Harvard reunion. And all the women who had gone to Radcliffe, the women's college of Harvard, came over to muscle into the picture of the Harvard guys. They were not happy with being Radcliffe. They wanted to be Harvard. So what did we do? Dress for Success in the '80s, the shoulder pads, all of that stuff. And so what we were trained to do was just be like men. Just be like men. And I was gonna be the best man you ever found in my position in OBGYN. And, breastfeeding and having a baby were the last things that you wanted to do. So
And you're a
I
professor in
oh, yeah.
addition to all of this
Oh,
too.
all of this and trying to, breastfeed and, okay, so I'm just gonna be over here. My life was split right down the middle. Here's what I'm seeing now. Young women, and, I recently saw Charlie Kirk here in Maine, and he was saying to the young men and women there, "Listen, getting married and having a family turns out to be something that contributes to lifelong meaning and happiness." And so we were told, um, you know, "Don't do that, your career is gonna be enough." And what I'm seeing now is a whole group of more conservative young women who are saying, somehow I forgot to get married, and now I'm in my 40s, and I'm living alone with cats, and I'm not so interested in that." So the pendulum is swinging back. Now listen, I was there watching my mother be a caged lion with 5 kids and having to do 3 meals a day. That was not who she wanted to be. She wanted to be a forest ranger, and she wanted to ski every day. So I saw the the 40s and 50s, like when the men came back from the war and Rosie the Riveter and the women who'd been building planes were now supposed to go back to Levittown and be the little woman, and then we had Betty Crocker come in, and then we had home ec and all. That's not it either. What we're seeing now is young people, like the amount of homeschooling has gone up dramatically. Public school, um entrance will be down 50% by the year 2030. People are now educating their kids at home. There's homesteading, people literally building their lives off the grid, off the whatever they've been told by the experts, so that there's true fulfillment, because what we've done is we've made it so that very few young people can afford even a house unless there are 2 incomes. Well, there are forces that have led to this, but again, like with your body, you have the power inside you to create a different reality. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm seeing the same thing.
right.
Absolutely. Last question. Why do we incarnate?
Because this is the coolest schoolhouse in the frickin' universe. And when I was at a Buddhist, retreat thing, like a monastery in Thailand, there was an old monk, he was 90, and he said, "The chance to incarnate in a human body is like 1 hair on an ox compared to all the hairs on an ox." And he talked about in heaven, it's like there's a line circling around the block, around for the chance to get a human body. So don't waste it, because you apparently here on the earth, you can grow more in a human body spiritually than anywhere else in the universe, because this place is so frickin' hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that too.
Mhm.
You are extraordinary. I absolutely love and adore you. I'm so grateful that you're in my life. And I just am so appreciative. And on behalf of the women of the world and humanity in general, thank you for being willing to teach all of us this combination of intuition and medicine, and to have the courage to really get this information out, because who knows how many bazillions of people's lives you've impacted. You impacted my life long before I ever met you, and you continue to do so. So thank you for everything that you do for humanity and for the world.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. And thank you for carrying it on in your realm. Yeah. So empowering.
How can everybody learn more about you and your work?
Well, I have a Substack, True North, at Substack. When you just go over to Substack, you'll see it, True North. And also, I'd love you to get on my e-news, drnorthrup.com. And we've got over there, we've got every book that I've ever written. Of course, you can get the books on Amazon. I can read my books to you. They're all on Audible. So when you're driving a long drive, I can read you a story about goddesses never age or energy vampires. And but the main thing is it's pretty much all on the website, drnorthrup.com.
And we'll put the link for that class that begins October 7th of 2025. And you said it's 4 weeks in a row. Is it a weekend? 4 weekends? Tuesdays.
Tuesdays, 7 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday.
And it'll be recorded. So if you're at a parent-teacher conference or something and you can't make it, you can listen to it anytime. So it's going to be on demand as well. And we'll have that up there too. All righty, everybody. Giving you a tune-up. Women's bodies, women's wisdom. We've got the queen, the fairy godmother of women's health, has been with us here today. So sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama, mwah, and from Maine too, where Chris is. We'll see you next time. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends.